I want to talk about the swarm. You just have such an interesting way of putting this out there. When a lot of us talk about, and we hear this all throughout social media, and many people are very concerned about sort of this the powers that be who are controlling things. There's this, there's an agenda like the World Economic Forum agenda or a globalist agenda, and the thinking is that there's maybe a group of people who are pulling the strings, plotting, like they've got a plan and they're now pushing everybody towards this plan. And you have a different theory of who's actually, or an understanding. I guess you could give us clarity on what's actually happening that's driving us towards this agenda.
Yeah, I think you nailed the problem. When people are trying to identify the enemy, Kim, they take sort of a lazy man's approach. They say, "Oh, it's the Rothschilds. Oh, it's
Bill
Klaus Schwab,
Gates,
right?
right? Yeah,
Or it's
right,
Bill
exactly.
Gates,
Yeah.
or it's this bloodline. Oh,
Yeah.
it's these people over here. It's and they keep going on. And if you
Hmm.
look at the history of that's never. In fact, what it does, it creates an opportunity to create more divisiveness without clarity, real unity. I'm not talking about the fake unity a lot of these people say, oh, let's have unity and shove everything under the rug, but really to have a real understanding. Now, the only way to get there, in my view, Kim, is using the knowledge of system science, which is what it's a field of engineering that really came about in the late 1900s, and to the height of it with the work of Ilya Prigogine in 1957 and won the Nobel Prize in physical chemistry for this. But the fundamental understanding is that every system in the universe is either a dumb system or an intelligent system. A dumb system typically takes an input and puts out an output. You could argue most in power want us to be that. Watch this ad, go buy this thing. Intelligent systems have a very clear goal. In this concept, the goal of those in power is power, profit, and control. And the goal is to maximize that. No different than a pilot who wants to go from point A to point B, a very clear goal. In order to achieve that goal, those in power use system science actually. They watch where they're headed. Are we going in the right direction? Do we have more people getting fat, dumb, and lazy? Do we have more people sort of outsourcing their future to people like Booby Kennedy or Trump or et cetera, fake leaders? And if that's happening, they're quite happy. And there are other signals. And then nowadays, with companies like Palantir, with companies like what Peter Thiel's done, they're getting enormous amounts of data. Right now, they have a very good idea which way people are going sentiment wise. And once they have which way people are going, what do they need to do? And they put inputs into the system. And those inputs are done by the swarm. Okay. Now, the swarm is not any one individual, not any one organization, but it's a interconnected, you could call it telepathically interconnected set of people with similar and sometimes slightly dissimilar interests. So the swarm is not unified. That's why they will one day kill a president, right? Or they'll have, because they're organized criminals fundamentally, which each
Mm.
having their own little fiefdoms. And if you watch a swarm of birds, they're not exactly always moving in the right direction, but collectively they sort of work out their differences and they move in a particular direction. You can see this if you watch a flock of birds. It's called swarm intelligence. And here, the swarm on the power areas, it includes, let's say, the top 100 university uh, presidents, right? It
Mhm.
includes the heads of the central banks. It includes some of the key leaders who run Hollywood, producers, and particularly the agents who control many of the Hollywood people, right? It
Mm.
includes the front people that they fund as politicians, right? The obvious establishment, people, let's say, like a Bush or the Clintons, and the not so obvious establishment, people like a Tulsi Gabbard or Bernie Sanders or Booby Kennedy or those kind of people. It's very well orchestrated. But all of these people are not in any physical location. Today, it's a multiracial aristocracy. They're the Indian Brahmins, right? They're the elites in universities like Oxford and Cambridge. But it's an interconnected group of people. And the best way to, and you can think about it, all systems ultimately seek their own kind of structure. Any system in the universe, it's fascinating. And so when you see a system of birds and you see a system of humans, you come to the same conclusion. There's certain fundamental systems principles. So it's a great video. I did it with a little blue marker and a whiteboard, and we did it in about 15 minutes. And everyone should watch it. But that I would argue that whiteboard took me about 50 years to get there. It was a deep understanding of system science. and the ability to articulate it. And I think, in spite of all the shadow banning, I think others have downloaded and put it up there. And I encourage everyone to steal it, copy it.
Yeah.
It's copy free. Get it
I'll
out
put
to as
that
many
link.
people.
Definitely, I'll put that link down below. But the basic idea being that people are operating, that the elites, that those who are running everything, those in the positions of power and positions of wealth, are naturally going in the same direction, naturally pushing society in a certain direction for their own self-preservation. Would you say? Would you say that their own motivation is themselves? They're not doing it for some necessarily big global world order type thing. It's
No,
just that that's how it's happened. It's just. Am I getting that
that's
right?
yeah, that's a vehicle. You could look at it's not any one individual ant that's fighting. For, on the one hand, the ant is doing its deal, but you have to look at the ant hill, right?
Yeah.
What emerges out, it's called an emergent property, right? The individual is doing their self-interest, but also there comes what's called an emergent property. And so the swarm is an emergent property of these individual characters who all want to maximize power, profit, and control for themselves. To the extent that they can have linkages with other people in this collective that helps them do that, they will build their alliances. But they may even have sometimes their own. It's like the mafia. It's organized crime,
Yeah.
right? Now, ultimately, all the organized criminals don't want the police coming in, right? Or don't want
Right.
the FBI. But together, they
Right.
may knock off one person. They may, support one person. It's that kind of thing. And once
Okay.
people understand this, it's much, much easier for people to then start looking at issues beyond, oh, this is a person, that's a person, because then they're running around with chickens with their heads cut off, going here, going there. And the swarm is very, very clever at distracting people away from the central thesis that's about maximizing power, profit, and control.
Yeah.
That's what it's
And
about.
and that makes sense. I mean, it like kind of what you're saying with the mafia, like the five families in New York, right? They're at war with
Yeah.
each other, but at the same time, they do work together in order to achieve a certain goal, which is to not let the police get them, right? They don't want to be cracked down on and exposed. So they'll work together on that one thing, but ultimately they're also battling it out and offing each other and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
in the
And I'm sorry. And I
go
think
ahead.
just in that context, I think when you look at that, it brings up this other very important thesis on how do you change the world. Are you going to look above to one mobster knocking off another mobster? So if it's a Trump today versus a Biden's, you got to understand both of these guys are organized crime families, right? Or when people get all involved in the JF Kennedy assassination, what I tell people is, look, Joe Kennedy is organized crime. So among organized criminals, no one is ever going to know who knocked off Jimmy Hoffa. No one
Mhm.
still doesn't know who knocked off Sam Giancana. And we have to understand that these are organized crime families who come together under certain situations, but among them, they still have their own contradictions. And we, as a quote unquote, the plebes and the peasants, why are we looking to them to see this guy knocked off this guy? And why are we choosing sides among these organized crime families? So it tells us to break out of the swarm.
Yeah. Okay. And there's and definitely, so there's not like one power, one mastermind behind this whole thing, or a group of masterminds behind the whole thing kind of leading us in these directions. It's really just, I think people are fundamentally selfish. It's just the average individual naturally, and that's built into us genetically, to look after ourselves and our preservation and our life, first and foremost. That's why we're willing to kill somebody who's maybe trying to kill us, right? I mean, maybe we have like the ethics of I don't kill, but in a certain circumstance I would. Same thing with my family, right? Then my next priority would be my family and caring for them, sometimes even them above myself, but it's still, I'm caring about my family more than your family, of course, naturally, just like you care about your family more than mine. So when people are operating selfishly and they're looking out for their own self-interest and what's going to be beneficial for them and their own families, society is set up in a certain way that they need to go and do certain things, achieve certain things, gain certain things like money, power, position, right? And so then they kind of end up going in that direction naturally together, and then saying, "Oh yeah, I care about you, I care about you," but really they don't care about us at all. I mean, they're looking out for themselves and they're siphoning resources because they're looking out and they're preserving for themselves. Let me tell you guys about Lean. This is a wonderful product from the great people at Brickhouse Nutrition. They make only high quality stuff, and their stuff really, really works. And what Lean does is this is going to help you lose weight. It's a supplement, all natural, going to help you lose weight. You take this supplement and About 3 weeks later, you're going to feel it kicking in. And what it's going to do is it's going to help suppress your appetite. Although I found in my experience that that part happens pretty much right away, the appetite suppression. But the rest of it, the lipolysis, like it helps burn fat off of your body that you already have stored, using that for energy. It helps suppress your appetite. It helps lower your blood sugar levels. So all of those three things are like the trifecta of what you need to really have an effective weight loss supplement. And so Lean does this for you. These three things helps you curb your cravings. I find when I take it, I don't crave snacks. I find I don't need to eat until, I'll have like a protein shake or my Field of Greens shake, or drink. I would say it's not really a shake. And then I have my dinner, and this is really helpful in losing weight. So you can get Lean by first going to their website, takelean.com. Use the promo code Kim15 and you will get 15% off your order. So takelean.com, promo code Kim15, 15% off your order, and all of that information is down below in the information.